Welcome back to Random Knowledge. Today's explainer is, well, it's going to get a little uncomfortable. We're diving deep into the hidden, often invisible forces of dark psychology. We're talking about those calculated, under-the-radar facts and tactics people use to manipulate, influence, and completely control others. It's totally fascinating, but yeah, definitely a bit unsettling. So let me ask you this. Have you ever just completely fallen for the illusion of a perfect connection? You know the feeling. You meet someone and instantly, it's like they're reading your mind. They share every single thought, every value, every fear. Feels like absolute magic, right? Well, what if I told you that magic wasn't fate at all, but actually a highly calculated psychological trap? Yep, we're dropping right into the deep end today. Section 1, the dark personalities. To really grasp these tactics, we've got to understand the architects behind them. All right, let's break this down. In psychology, there's something called the dark triad. It's essentially a toxic cocktail of 3 malevolent personality traits that share a seriously callous, manipulative vibe. First up, narcissism. Think massive ego, grandiosity, and practically zero empathy for anyone else. Next is Machiavellianism. These folks are wildly calculating, totally indifferent to morality, and purely driven by self-interest. And finally, psychopathy, which brings impulsivity, antisocial behavior, and a really chilling lack of remorse to the mix. Now here is where it gets super interesting. Where do you think these traits actually thrive the most? The corporate ladder. Research shows that dark triad personalities often absolutely crush it in high-pressure, ambiguous work environments. Why? Because they are absolute masters of impression management. Their initial charisma, confidence, and risk-taking get mistaken for bold leadership, which lets them climb the ranks rapidly while completely hiding their destructive potential. Which brings us to our core definition. Dark psychology is literally the study and application of psychological principles to manipulate, influence, or control people in really harmful ways. And those folks scoring high in the dark triad, they are the primary practitioners here, using these exact tactics to get what they want, usually at the direct expense of everyone else. Section 2. Everyday mind games. Let's expose the actual everyday toolkit these manipulators use to gain power over you. Think back to that intense new relationship we just talked about. Is it genuinely a soulmate connection, or are you actually experiencing a dangerous little tactic known as mirroring? Look, in a normal, healthy setting, mirroring is just an unconscious way we show empathy, like smiling when someone else smiles. But in the realm of dark psychology, it becomes a highly strategic weapon. Let's look at exactly how this weapon is deployed. A manipulator will literally study your values, your fears, your desires, and then just reflect them right back at you. They imitate you to gain your trust super fast. They listen intensely to your vulnerabilities just to collect control data, stuff they're absolutely going to use against you later on. They morph into your perfect match to secure your admiration, all while hiding their true, empty selves just to keep you confused and completely dependent on them. It's not real connection, guys. It's emotional imitation. So it's absolutely crucial to know the difference between healthy reflection and toxic manipulation. In a healthy dynamic, when an issue comes up, you might ask, what is this teaching me? But manipulators, they use a nasty trick called blame reversal. They flip the mirror right back onto you. If you tell them they hurt your feelings, they'll turn around and say you're only upset because you haven't healed your own trauma. They completely dismiss your valid feelings just to dodge taking any real responsibility. And that naturally leads us to one of the absolute most damaging tactics out there, gaslighting. Gaslighting is this insidious, gradual process where an abusive person manipulates you into doubting your own perceptions, your memories, and ultimately your own sanity. It starts small, maybe just suggesting you're being a little forgetful, but over time it escalates until you feel totally incompetent, you're constantly apologizing, and you become completely dependent on their fabricated version of reality. Then we have the more subtle deceptions, like paltering. Paltering is wild and incredibly frustrating. It's literally when someone uses the truth to lie. They'll state perfectly accurate facts, but deliberately conceal the crucial information needed to see the whole picture. It's like someone swearing they're completely open and honest because they gave you their phone password, while actively hiding an entire secret life that, well, just doesn't happen to be on that specific phone. Oh, and we cannot forget triangulation. This is a classic move where a manipulator drags a third party into your dynamic purely to manufacture competition, jealousy, or insecurity. By making you feel like you're suddenly competing for their attention or approval against someone else, they keep you completely off balance, which just cements their own control over the whole situation. Section 3. The Paradox of Favors. All right, let's switch gears and explore a very different kind of psychological tactic. This one is actually a fascinating, almost ironic little hack. It goes way back to Benjamin Franklin. In his autobiography, Franklin talked about dealing with a rival legislator who absolutely despised him. Instead of trying to win the guy over by doing him a favor, Franklin flipped the script. He simply asked to borrow a rare book from the rival's personal library. After returning it with a polite thank you note, the rival suddenly became incredibly civil. And get this, they actually remained great friends for the rest of their lives. Today, we call this the Ben Franklin effect. The secret sauce here is cognitive dissonance. Doing a favor for someone actually makes us like them more. Our brains basically rationalize the action by saying, well, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to help this person unless I actually liked them, right? Manipulators, salespeople, politicians, they all use this trick to subtly build rapport and compliance, simply by asking you for a really small favor. Section 4. The Ultimate Override. We've talked a lot about everyday mind games, but what happens when ordinary people are pushed to the absolute limit by authority? It's a terrifying question to consider. Would you administer a painful, potentially even lethal electric shock to a complete stranger just because someone in a lab coat told you to? Your gut reaction is probably, no way, absolutely not. But psychologist Stanley Milgram's infamous 1961 obedience experiments at Yale University proved something entirely different. In the experiment, participants were told by a stern authority figure to give increasingly severe fake shocks to an actor in another room, who was literally screaming in fake agony. The terrifying reality? 65% of ordinary everyday participants went all the way up to the maximum 450 volts. Even though they heard the screams, even though they were sweating and trembling in intense distress themselves, they kept pushing the button simply because the experimenter firmly stated, the experiment requires that you continue. Milgram explained this horrifying outcome using something he called the agentic state. As he pointed out, ordinary people simply doing their jobs can become active agents in a terribly destructive process. When we're put into a strict hierarchy, we often abandon our own personal responsibility. We start viewing ourselves merely as instruments carrying out someone else's wishes. It just goes to show that the darkest psychological force isn't always some malicious personality. Sometimes it's literally just blind obedience to authority. Section 5. Protecting your mind. After uncovering all these terrifying realities, let's talk about how you can actually spot these tactics and defend yourself. Here is a rapid-fire actionable checklist to keep your mind safe, especially from things like mirroring in new relationships. Number 1, slow down. Authentic relationships unfold gradually, If it feels too perfect, too fast, just take a step back and observe. Number 2, test for consistency. People can absolutely mimic your words, but they cannot fake long-term integrity. Number 3, keep your emotional privacy. You really don't owe anyone your deepest traumas right out of the gate. And number 4, stay grounded. A tactic like mirroring entirely loses its power when you have a rock-solid sense of who you actually are. Always remember this fundamental truth. Healthy love, healthy connection, it feels peaceful, not euphoric or chaotic. If you do realize you've been manipulated in the past, please understand that you didn't fail. You were just open and trusting, which is exactly what manipulators prey upon. True connection relies on consistent integrity. It meets you right where you are. It doesn't need to rely on explosive, immediate intensity just to trap you. We've explored the hidden architectures of control, the everyday mind games, and the frankly terrifying power of authority. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a good look at the relationships, the workplaces, and the authorities in your own life right now. Knowing what you now know about the hidden facts and tools of dark psychology, who is really holding the mirror in your life? Keep questioning, keep learning, and thanks so much for joining this explainer here on Random Knowledge.